Sabine O'Hara, Dean of the University of the District of Columbia's College of Agriculture, Urban Sustainability and Environmental Sciences. Welcome to Causes. The University of the District of Columbia is the only exclusively urban land-grant university in the United States. As the university's land-grant college, the College of Agriculture, Urban Sustainability and Environmental Sciences is charged with leading the university's land-grant mission to offer research-based academic and community outreach programs that improve the quality of life and economic opportunities for district residents and organizations. Research-based is a critical distinction. The information we share in our community outreach and academic programs is based on rigorous research. With me today are two people who have been continuously on the cutting edge of research. Professor Thomas Kakowicz is Emeritus Professor of Environmental Science here at the University of the District of Columbia. Professor Kakowicz is steeped in the sciences as a physicist and inventor who holds over 20 patents. And Dr. Russ Swain, a scientist and researcher who specializes in information science. Our topic is the discovery of the fifth force. Tom, tell us, what is the fifth force? And maybe because not all of us are as steeped in physics as you are, what are the other four forces? If there is a discovery of the fifth one, that leads me to believe there must be four that have already been accepted.
We do have four forces. We understand them, and they go the strong force, I'm going to just name some. Strong force, weak force, electromagnetic, and gravity. Those forces have been observed, and we know they exist. That is something that we know. What we don't know is the following. Now, forces are members of a family, just like siblings. Okay? And siblings, they must share some common denominator, let's say like DNA. Now, these forces, they have the unit and dimension of forces, which makes very interesting thing. They're not pressure, they're not something else, they're forces. Okay? So, and they must share something with the mother force. A common denominator that exists between these forces is radiation. And prior to existence of these forces, there was a mother force, which is also family of force and radiation. That makes it the fifth force, and the reason I say fifth force is like after 4 comes 5. Okay. And it could have been 0 force, but you know. But in this case, it will deal with very interesting part. We have enough knowledge in physics that radiation could be put into equations, Planck's black body radiation. If you do that, and it's detailed, and you solve the problems, okay, what you see is that there will be convergence. Shockingly, there will be convergence, and there will be a force appearing from this convergence of black body radiation, Planck's black body, okay? It will be force that deals with radiation and nothing else. So
let me pick up there, Dr. Vane. What is all of this about, black body radiation? So we discovered black holes about when? It's not too long ago, right? We didn't know they existed, and now they're pretty common knowledge.
And Tom has been searching for these things carefully. And to really be able to explain to others, we're going to have to be able to observe the forces. And the nice thing is experimentalists have been observing the 4 forces for some time. They've constructed experiments, they've exchanged their data, they've made a community. But some fundamental things still stick out in our heads. Like when Newton says, something at rest tends to stay at rest. Well, I can't find anything at rest in the universe. We're spinning, we're revolving, we're rotating, we're doing this. I mean, if anything, we entitize, we get we get the same inertia of things around us. So if people are lazy around us, we're lazy too. But let's go back to more physics. So we're racing through space at thousands of miles per hour, probably hundreds of thousands of miles per hour if we look at our galaxy. And the question really is have we constructed a model of pickup sticks that now that we don't have to just do stuff on paper, that we can actually put it in a computer and examine the positives and the negatives of our assumptions, we can actually look at things that haven't occurred. We can do data manipulation, we can do data collection. I mean, think what Johannes Kepler would give for our computers, for just one computer, instead of having to reduce all those notes of Tycho Brahe.
Yeah.
So I didn't really answer your question about black holes, but I just wanted to give you this perspective that Tom has been willing to embrace the beauty of mathematics as a language, but then wondered a lot about its coupling to reality. And so he explores axioms.
So that's where you always start. Your language is mathematics, and you start with solving the equations. You just said, there is Planck's black body radiation. So explain that a little bit more, because not every one of our listeners may be familiar with that. And then you solve these mathematical equations, and you said it converges. That means there's a solution somehow. There is something that emerges, that appears in the numbers, in the equations.
Whenever you solve mathematical equation, they're just that, mathematical equation. Okay, we don't know whether they're physical, because mathematics is something and physics is something else. Okay, so what we have to do is be realistic. Now, what we have done so far is that all the way, and not too far of anybody, like we have used basically calculus to solve the problems. And calculus already sets axioms. It's like one of them is single valued. That is practically stopping everything right there, because single valued means just that. I will solve a problem, I will integrate it, and we're going to come up with a single value. Let's just say 17. Which 17 are we talking about? We did not sequence it. I could tell you 2 plus 15 is 17, or about 18 minus 1 is 17, and I could do complex conjugate and come up with 17. Okay? The problem has been that we never followed beyond that because we didn't have the tools. Now, here comes the computational science versus calculus. Single valued is one good answer. Computational science will give us a lot of other answers. And just like garbage DNA, you cannot throw that garbage DNA away. There are some things that we should be absolutely considering seriously. And that is the difference to do now the problem solving.
So we've reached a level of computational capacity, just in terms of the computing capacity that we now have, that allows us to do things very differently, and to not just look at that one value that's an outcome, but as you said, Tom, there is a process of how that value comes about. It can be 15 plus 2, or it can be 18 minus 1 is 17, and an infinite number of other combinations that lead to that same result. And so it may not just be that value, but how we got there, how it emerged.
That is true. And Ross will explain a little bit more about computational science, because he's expert into it. Just like
Well, when we think about computation, we realize that just like writing a program, it can have a lot of pieces. And we have to remember to not arbitrarily consign some of those pieces to the wastebasket because we're writing a paper and we only have 10 pages. So when we keep those other pieces, what happens is we find out that under different conditions, that you end up with different answers. There was a whole thing on chaos theory that sort of emerged, and often the chaos that was observed was because they drove the program past the bounds where a human would have just stopped.
And so then it's really the capacity that we have, the computing capacity that we have, the computational capacity that we have, that allows us to imagine other things
Exactly.
that then emerge that we weren't able to observe.
And so in science, we're now able to actually go with Thomas Kuhn's work on the science of scientific revolution, theory of scientific revolution, and we're actually able to break paradigms on purpose. And if we go and we say, this paradigm seems to have backed us into a cul-de-sac,
Yeah.
and we can't seem to get out of this alley, then what we can do is we can entertain a whole bunch of new ideas. And in the old days, because we humans have a limited amount of focus, we would not be able to entertain in our journals 10 theories of particle interaction.
Yeah.
But we can now. And then what we can do is we can find under certain experimental situations that this one that's deprecated that we hardly ever use is really valuable. It's sort of like, yes, there are snowflakes that are six-pointed under normal atmospheric conditions, but there's something like 32 different crystal forms for snowflakes. And they don't look at all like snowflakes. And this gives us that capability. And so now, when someone comes up with something novel, we don't have to say, I'm sorry, our journal doesn't publish your area.
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated by the game theorists and decision theorists. They go and they say, we can help you solve your problem. But they don't publish in the same journal because they hate each other's axioms. They're completely different. And so what we're trying to say is there's an inclusive way to consider more theories. But when you start doing that computationally, it's amazing that it all scales at the universal scale, at the galactic scale, and at the desktop scale of 1 meter, and all the way down to Planck's scale, that they all seem to converge on this background force.
True.
So there's a pattern, definitely, that we see at the very macro level and at the very micro level. There is a pattern. What you call sort of the mother force, right? The
Right.
trunk from which this whole tree emerges somehow. So that's the original force? Is that a way to think of it?
Well, and you just said something, you're right. There's a micro and there's a macro. See, in physics, we are limited. There is no such thing as zero. And micro level to us and physics is Planck scale. The whole physics fails to pieces when we pass that point. Planck scale. I'll give you an example. For distances, is basically 0.3201 centimeter.
Whoa, that's
Yeah.
tiny.
Yeah, that's, yeah. I mean, so, but it's not really zero, it's that. A macro, we have no such thing as infinity. We don't know what physics means, like infinity. And mathematics we do, we just say infinity. And physics we say, well, maybe it's the size of our universe. 10 to the power, let's say 28 centimeter. 1 followed by 28, okay.
Wow.
Or temperature, the mother radiation temperature, 1 followed by 32 zeros. But see, we have a limitation. We just don't go crazy about, well, we go from 0 to infinity. It really doesn't make sense. That's exactly the difference between where you could start, where you could end up. And the fifth force, obviously, something which is amazing about fifth force, which converges, by the way, very detailed, is written in the book, The Fifth Force, converges into a very simple equation. That simplicity is enough to tell me there's something in nature that exists. It's basically speed of light to power 4 divided by Newton's gravitational constant. You know, if E equals mc squared is so well known, okay, m is variable, c squared is not. And fifth force, c to the power 4 is not variable, neither is Newtonian gravitational constant, which immediately tells us that is a force unique and never changed, and it's constant, and the magnitude is very large, and its dimension is force. So everything is fitting into there is that force that is ruling our universe from Planck scale to present macro scale. And no force exists that I know. Gravity, they all have ranges that goes from that scale to that scale.
So gravity, I understand. That has to do with material, right? So
Let me tell you.
Newton's apple, boom, there it goes. Can't stop it.
Sabine, if you understand gravity, you beat me.
Oh,
because because for us to understand gravity, we have to understand what is the agent that creates that, which is graviton. As of yet,
So you mean
we
it's
have
not as simple as Newton's apple?
that is absolutely right.
Okay.
As of yet, we have not been able to discover what that graviton is.
Okay.
Okay.
So what
But-
makes the apple fall?
It's an interaction between graviton. What makes a tennis court full of 5,000 people watching two players, that ball? It's action, reaction. It's absolutely an agent that is being, so that the graviton, but I'm just giving you an example of how much we don't understand, you know. And we shouldn't be afraid to say we don't understand, but we should be very happy if computational science, which is not our cousin, you know, is not doing us a favor, tells us based on the sequencing, I could show you the graphic of function-generated graphic of what these values mean.
So we're kind of at an interesting point in time, right? Because
Yes.
all of a sudden there seems to be a lot of interest in the fifth force.
Yes.
So what precipitated that? What caused that?
Well,
What happened?
I would think that it's actually the sort of the desert that we've been in the sense that we know we should be making more progress. In 1900 to 1920, incredible amounts of progress were made in physics. All sorts of brand new ideas were developed, and then we sort of settled down. You know, one of the things that just seems very Ptolemaic is the so-called particle zoo. We have this thing that of all these particles, and we keep making up more particles. And the problem is it looks like epicycles to me. It looks like we're really patching a theory that's not actually right. And so, but yet in order to get a PhD in physics, you have to actually genuflect at that altar. Because if you say that you don't believe in strange particles or charmed particles, this is where the door is, right? And so we really have a sort of a cult, and the entry requires the belief, and it's really hard to get tenure if you actually go and say, you know, I'd really like to challenge some of our beliefs. And that's one of the things about Tom is he's absolutely fearless. I mean, so as a result, he actually doesn't actually hold sway with him. But there are 400,000 physicists out there right now who are teaching high school. And the reason they're teaching high school is because they can't get to be part of the CERN team. But they're just as smart. They're just as hungry for new ideas. And Tom is opening up the world so that a professor in Portugal who doesn't have money for a giant laboratory can look at this, can look at Tom's calculations and can say, I think I can make a contribution here. I think I can do an observable experiment in human scale, in our earthly scale, and it doesn't have to be done with super colliders.
So it's the mathematics then that opens up those possibilities of
Yeah.
taking
Yes.
it now into the experimental world.
Yeah. The mathematics basically is a conversation, really, between our mind and what nature is doing. Now, by the way, what we do with mathematics and what nature does with its physics, they're not exactly compatible all the time. But we try to match them. And that's why it's very serious business to basically not to go overboard, you know, understand that. And we are very serious people because we take it back there. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have humor, okay, like you say.
Absolutely.
And understand that we did not understand everything, except that we like to do two things. Mathematics is a process of thinking. Physics is basically a process that actually exists in nature. And observation is very important in physics, okay? And mathematics, I did observe through computational science, thank you, I could see the functions, I could see the sequencing, I could see the values. But in physics, we say, that's good. We need to see something of observation.
Yes.
And what Ross said is very touchy because we do discuss that in our other meetings together. There is Fermilab, there is CERN, and there is that. That was good.
Big
Okay.
and famous physics labs.
Yeah,
That
and
spend
expensive,
a lot of
and
money.
expensive, yeah,
Yes,
and
yeah.
expensive. But there is also a bigger lab
Yeah.
because in the same labs we could not possibly, you know, come up with results that we see from Cosmos.
Yeah.
The bigger lab is Cosmos.
The bigger lab is nature itself.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Now, we do have enhanced, you know, systems, whether it's telescopes of all kind, but by the computational science that we will be observing nature as if it was our lab, okay? And in physics, we need to have that observation, and we're gonna discuss where the fifth force could be observed.
So tell us a little bit about that. Where could it be observed?
Well, it's
I-
It's
the collab-
everywhere?
well,
I could, if you,
gonna say,
if
why
you,
don't you?
yeah, yeah. You understand that, and this is funny story that it started during the Cold War between the Soviet and U.S. They're worried about Soviet, you know, having nuclear bombs in space, and the answer that they gave to Pentagon was that the Ruskies are blowing bombs in space every day. And come on, even Russians couldn't have that many bombs, okay? The key was that there were gamma burst, you know, radiation that was coming out from all over. And the whole is called gamma ray burst, okay? Now, the key important thing was that this gamma ray bursts, if they were happening every day, in our galaxy, we'd be fried, okay? So they realized, bottom line, that, boy, that's happening in different galaxies. But since we have 100 billion galaxies, that's 1 followed by 11, okay, or so, okay? And since we have 100 billion of stars in each galaxy, that's another 1 followed by 11, that's 1 followed by 22.
Wow.
So the possibility
22
that
zeros.
that gravitational collapse will exist, gravitational collapse, and we'll end up with 2 things: 1 burst, you know, implosion, and 1, you know, explosion. Okay, implodes or explode. The gamma ray bursts, they were absolutely implosions. Stars are imploding, and those gamma rays, they come from all over. I'm talking coming from different galaxies. Now, and the power associate, power meaning energy per unit time. This is physical power, energy per unit time. Associated with those gamma burst is 5th force times speed of light.
Wow.
Now, like, whoa.
Yeah.
Do we have enough of those? Yeah, we have hundreds of billions of those. The second one would be, remember, there was explosion, now implosion. Implosion means black holes. Do we have black holes? Now we understand we have hundreds of billions of black holes throughout the universe. Okay, we do. And one of the solutions, rigorous solutions of Einstein's field equation was solved by a fellow called Schwarzschild. Okay, and he died young during World War I. Okay, now, and there is something called Schwarzschild radius. We call it gravitational radius, and common language is event horizon.
Okay.
Okay, so do we have black holes? Plenty. Now, if you take that equation and exchange mass for energy, which we could do that because mass and energy are related, you will see a denominator of that equation, there's 5th force. Again, that's observation and nature. And you go now to the level of micro, quantum, at Planck scale, a force known as Coulomb force, so common in us, becomes the 5th force. So there's enough evidence 5th force exists.
Wow. We have just barely scratched the surface on the 5th force. Thank you very much for being my guests. Professor Thomas Kekovich and Dr. Russ Vane are scientists who are at the cutting edge of research so that the rest of us can enjoy new inventions and better ways of doing things. Professor Kekovich and Dr. Vane work with the university so that we can translate their discoveries and apply them to improve the quality of life and economic opportunity for residents of the District of Columbia and for people all over the world. Our mission as a public land-grant university is to share our knowledge about new discoveries not only in our classrooms and laboratories, but you will find faculty and staff from the land-grant program of our college all over Washington, D.C., leading workforce development programs, preparing workers to earn professional certificates, and conducting workshops in food preparation, nutrition, urban agriculture, and health management for people of all ages and of all walks of life. If you would like more information, please visit us at www.udc.edu/causes. Thank you for joining me on Causes, a television series from the College of Agriculture, Urban Sustainability and Environmental Sciences of the University of the District of Columbia. I am Sabina O'Hara. See you next time on Causes.